Hey gamers, if you're into action roguelike games, you already know how addictive they can be. You jump in for one quick run and suddenly you're still playing hours later, trying to push a little further each time. Some games focus on tight, skill-based combat, while others let you experiment with different builds and play styles. So in this video, we're counting down 20 action roguelike games that are absolutely worth your time right now. Alright then, without further ado, let's get started. First up on our list is Kiborg. This is a 3D roguelite beat-em-up that feels like Streets of Rage decided to grow up and hit the gym, then borrowed Arkham Asylum's combat system. You fight your way through a cyberpunk prison mixing melee, guns, and implants that actually change how you play instead of just boosting numbers. What stands out is how smooth the combat feels once it clicks, and yeah, it will take a few painful runs before your brain catches up. The upgrade system also keeps things interesting, especially when playing co-op, which is honestly where this game shines the most. It's not the prettiest game, but it's way more fun than it looks. If you've got a friend, this is an easy recommendation. Before we go into the list, I want to say thank you to Astral Lords for sponsoring this video. Astral Lords is a sci-fi survival roguelite game that combines two genres you don't usually see together. Yup, intense bullet hell combat and large-scale base building strategy. On one side, you have intense bullet hell survival gameplay where you're constantly fighting off alien swarms, dodging attacks, and upgrading your character through roguelite progression systems. On the other side, you're also building your own defenses. You can place towers, resource structures, and fortifications that help you survive future waves and create different tactical approaches. What I find interesting is that you're not only getting stronger through character upgrades, you're also improving your entire operation by developing a persistent home system between runs. Resources collected during missions can be used to unlock technologies, expand your headquarters, and gain access to stronger units and buildings over time. It's a surprisingly cool mix of bullet hell action and RTS style base building, two genres that almost never show up together. Astral Lords is available now on Steam with a limited time 10% launch discount. The game launches as a solo experience, and online co-op is already planned for Q3 2026, which honestly sounds like it could get pretty crazy. So if you're looking for something that combines bullet hell action, roguelite progression, base building, tower defense, and strategy into one package, Astral Lords is a must-have. So what are you waiting for? Go check out Astral Lords by clicking the link in the description and experience the action RTS roguelite that will blow your mind. Alright then, let's get back to the list. Next on the list is the Rogue Prince of Persia. This one is a side-scrolling action platformer with roguelite elements, and yeah, if you like Dead Cells, you should already be installing this instead of pretending you'll check it later. The core gameplay is all about movement, and honestly, that's where it shines. The prince can run, wall jump, vault, and basically treat every surface like a playground, which makes combat feel smooth and stylish without trying too hard. The art style leans into a Sasanian-inspired look, and it actually stands out instead of blending into the usual indie pile. Boss fights are fun too, pushing you to use everything you've learned instead of just button mashing like a confused raccoon. Now, fair warning, it's not super deep, you won't be here for 100 hours, and the weapon variety isn't huge. But for what it is, it's focused, polished, and just genuinely fun to play. If you want something with great movement and a solid gameplay loop, this one is definitely worth trying. Moving on to Noita. This is a 2D action roguelite where you play as a little wizard who dies a lot, usually because of your own bad decisions. The core gameplay revolves around exploring underground caves, building insane spell combinations, and interacting with a fully simulated world where everything burns, melts, or explodes, often at the worst possible time. What really stands out is how open the game is. There's no clear goal, no guidance, just pure experimentation. You can turn enemies into sheep, dig around problems, or accidentally destroy yourself in the process. The combat feels weird at first, but once it clicks, it's ridiculously creative. It's frustrating, unfair, and kind of brilliant. If you enjoy learning things the hard way, this one's worth it. Then we have Sworn, which is basically what happens when you love Hades, but also have friends and refuse to play alone. It's a co-op action roguelite set in a corrupted Arthurian world, where you fight through enemies using different classes, abilities, and upgrades. At first glance, yeah, it looks very familiar. The combat feels similar, the structure is almost identical, just with less story and fewer characters talking your ear off. But the big difference is simple. You can play with up to 4 people, and that changes everything. The co-op is the real highlight here. It's smooth, responsive, and actually balanced for group play, which is rare. Sure, the upgrades can feel a bit basic, mostly just numbers going up, but the moment-to-moment gameplay still holds up. If you ever played Hades and thought, this would be better with friends, well, here you go. Just make sure you actually have friends. Then there's BlazBlue Entropy Effect. It is a side-scrolling action roguelite that somehow feels closer to a fighting game than most actual fighting games. You're not just mashing buttons here, you're chaining combos, juggling enemies, and pulling off stylish moves that make you look way better than you actually are. Each character plays differently, so switching things up actually matters, not just for show. The standout here is the combat. It's smooth, detailed, and ridiculously satisfying once you understand it, which, fair warning, the game does a terrible job explaining. But hey, struggle builds character, right? Now it even has co-op, so you can drag a friend in and suffer or flex together. The story? Forget it exists. Just enjoy the combat, it's worth it. Following that, we've got Astral Ascent. It's a 2D action platformer roguelite that somehow slipped under most people's radar, which is honestly a bit embarrassing for the genre. You pick from multiple characters, each with unique weapons and playstyles, then build your setup through spells, gambits, and auras that actually let you control how your run evolves. You'll notice pretty quickly that combat carries the whole experience. It feels smooth, responsive, and surprisingly strategic, not just careless spam. On top of that, the pixel art is gorgeous and the boss fights are well designed enough to keep you paying attention. There's even co-op, so yes, you can drag a friend into the chaos. If you enjoy games like Hades, this is an easy recommendation. Next up is Wizard of Legend. This is a top-down action roguelike where you play as a spellcasting wizard, basically throwing elements around like you're the avatar, just with less balance and more chaos. The core gameplay is all about chaining spells together, building your own loadout, and trying not to get destroyed in seconds. Most of your time is spent mastering the combat, and that's where the game delivers the most. It's insanely quick and lets you mix different elemental abilities into some pretty ridiculous combos. On top of that, local co-op and even PvP give it extra life, assuming you actually have friends. It's definitely an underrated gem, though a bit short and not super varied in maps. Still, if you enjoy spell-based combat, this is easy to recommend. Just don't expect the sequel to magically outdo this one. Taking the next spot is Gunfire Reborn. Well, it is a roguelike FPS that easily earns its spot as one of the must-play games in the genre, whether you like it or not. You pick a hero, jump into a run, and start blasting through enemies while stacking upgrades that can get ridiculously strong if you know what you're doing. The gunplay feels satisfying, especially with its focus on weak points, so skill actually matters instead of just dumping bullets like a confused toddler. On top of that, the build system is where things get interesting, letting you mix weapons, scrolls, and character abilities into something borderline broken. It kind of feels like Borderlands met Risk of Rain 2 and decided to raise a furry child. Co-op is also surprisingly solid, which means you can drag your friends into the chaos. It's not perfect though. The story is basically non-existent, and some translations feel like they went through 3 Google Translate passes, but honestly, if you enjoy this kind of game, skipping it would just be you making bad life choices. Turning now to Deadzone Rogue, as you expect. It is another FPS, a roguelike you should seriously consider if you're looking for something to play with friends besides Gunfire Reborn. At its core, it's a sci-fi shooter where you move through stages, pick up weapons, stack upgrades, and build your loadout as you go. The shooting feels tight and responsive, almost like a lighter Destiny, and the weapon sounds actually have weight, which is rare these days. The progression is simple, but satisfying, with plenty of build options if you're not stuck using the same rifle every run. It works great solo, but it really shines in co-op, especially if your friends can aim. For the price, it's honestly hard to complain. Not perfect, but it is really worth to play. Then we have Soulstone Survivors. You know, this is one of those games that clearly took the Vampire Survivors formula and decided, what if we just push this further? You're thrown into a top-down bullet hell where you pick a class, stack abilities, and deal with waves of enemies while dodging like your life depends on it. Because it does. If you're a fan of Vampire Survivors, this is basically a must-play. Just expect things to hit harder and demand more attention. There's a ton of classes, skills, and upgrades to unlock, so progression feels meaningful even if the loop can get repetitive later on. Still, it's polished, packed with content, and surprisingly easy to sink hours into. Definitely worth your time unless you get bored easily, which, let's be honest, might be a you problem. Moving on to Brotato. This one is a Vampire Survivor-like game that looks simple at first, then quietly eats your free time without asking permission. You control a potato, yes, a literal potato, fighting off waves of enemies using multiple weapons at once, while trying not to get deleted in seconds. It's pretty brutal, especially on higher difficulty, and somehow it even made its way to Android, so now you can suffer anywhere. What makes it interesting is the build system. With dozens of characters, each run pushes you to think differently, instead of just stacking damage like a maniac. The pacing also feels tighter than most games in this genre, so you're always doing something, not just waiting around. It's addictive, a bit unfair sometimes, but honestly, it's one of the better ones out there. Just don't expect mercy. Next on the list is Children of Morta, a story-driven action RPG with roguelite mechanics that focuses on something most games ignore: family. Instead of playing a lone hero, you control the Bergsons, each with their own fighting style, and progress feels shared across everyone, which is surprisingly satisfying. The combat is simple but solid, while the real hook is how the story unfolds between runs, showing small, personal moments that actually make you care. Visually, it's pixel art done right, backed by a narrator that gives it a storybook feel. It's not the deepest game out there, but playing co-op, especially with someone close, makes it hit differently. If you want a roguelike with heart, instead of just grinding, this one's easy to recommend. Up next, we have Enter the Gungeon, a roguelike twin-stick shooter where you dive into a dungeon packed with enemies, weapons, and more bullets than your brain can comfortably process. You play as a group of Gungeoneers, each chasing a gun that can erase their past mistakes, which is either deep or just an excuse to shoot everything. The gameplay leans heavily on precision, movement, and timing matter way more than hoping for good items, and the controls feel tight enough that every mistake is clearly your fault, not the game's. One of the highlights is the weapon variety. Some guns look ridiculous, some feel useless at first, and then suddenly they carry your entire run. It also supports co-op, though you'll be sharing one screen like it's the early console days. It's difficult in a way that demands patience, not luck. If you're into games that expect you to improve instead of handing out easy wins, this is one you shouldn't skip. Then, there's Ravenswatch. This is a top-down action roguelite that somehow turns your favorite fairy tale characters into tired, battle-hardened fighters. And yes, this might actually be one of the best co-op roguelikes right now, assuming you have friends who won't drag half the map into your fight. You explore a dark fantasy world called Reverie, building your character through talents, upgrades, and some surprisingly deep skill interactions. Combat feels weighty and demands attention, not just button mashing like you usually do. Early on, it's rough, you'll die a lot, get confused, maybe question your life choices, but once it clicks, it really clicks. Play it solo if you hate yourself, or bring friends and actually enjoy it. Either way, it's worth your time. Next up is Saros. Basically my excuse for not mentioning Returnal, because yeah, same developer, just a different name slapped on it. Made by Housemarque, this is a third-person sci-fi action game with light roguelite elements, but don't worry, it's way more forgiving this time. Instead of forcing you to memorize everything like you're studying for exams you didn't sign up for, the game leans into character progression and steady upgrades. You play as Arjun Devraj, exploring a strange colony stuck under a cosmic disaster, and most of your time is spent shooting, dodging, and managing a new shield system that actually matters. Combat feels great, visuals are top tier, and it's just fun to play. The story? Not amazing, but honestly, you're not here for that. If Returnal scared you, this is the safer, better looking version. Sliding into Shape of Dreams. I think this is one of the best co-op action roguelites you can jump into right now, especially if you're tired of playing solo like a hermit. It blends top-down combat with fluid movement and skill-based gameplay that feels smooth from the start. You pick from multiple characters, each with different playstyles, then build your setup through skills and upgrades that actually let you shape how you fight. It works great both alone and with friends, though co-op is clearly where it shines. Sure, things can get a little messy later on, but overall it's stylish, satisfying, and easy to get hooked on. If you've got friends, play it. If not, well, maybe start there first. And the one you might already expected, Dead Cells, a 2D platformer roguelike that somehow refuses to get old, no matter how many years or DLCs they keep throwing at it. You play as this weird headless thing controlling corpses, slicing through enemies while jumping, dodging, and trying not to embarrass yourself every 5 seconds. The combat feels smooth, weapons come in all kinds of styles, and the game quietly expects you to actually get good instead of blaming luck. There's not much story to hold your hand, just you, your skills, and your bad decisions. Most of you already know this game, but yeah, it's still absolutely worth playing. Honestly, if you haven't tried it yet, what exactly are you waiting for? Entering the top 3, we have Absolum, a dark fantasy beat-em-up roguelike that somehow manages to revive a genre people only remember when they feel nostalgic. You pick a character, jump into side-scrolling fights, and build your setup through abilities and upgrades that actually change how you play. What makes it stand out is how it blends that classic arcade brawler feel with modern progression. It's basically what happens when Golden Axe and Hades decide to raise a child together, and surprisingly, it works really well. The combat feels satisfying, the art style looks ridiculously good, and co-op with friends? Honestly, that's where this game shines. If you're still playing boring multiplayer games, this is your sign to upgrade. Absolum is easily one of the best beat-em-up roguelikes right now, and yeah, you're probably not going to regret it. Moving on to Elden Ring Nightreign, it is basically what happens when From Software decides you don't need a 100-hour journey and just throws you into intense co-op sessions instead. It's a standalone action roguelite where you team up with others in 45-minute runs, fighting through enemies and building your setup on the fly. Set in a darker version of the Lands Between, you play as Nightfarers taking down Night Lords, and yeah, the bosses are exactly as punishing as you'd expect. The big difference here is the focus on teamwork. Solo is, let's just say, not recommended unless you enjoy suffering alone. If you love Elden Ring but want something more cooperative and faster paced, this is an easy pick. Just bring friends. Seriously. And easily at number 1 on the list, we have Hades 2, which is an action roguelike that somehow raises the bar again. You play as Melanoa, fighting through Greek mythology with a combat system that feels sharper and more flexible than before. Builds are clearer, upgrades actually tell you what they do, and the game never wastes your time, which is rare these days. It's packed with content, characters that actually feel alive, and small story moments that hit harder than they should. Even after dozens of hours, it keeps pulling you back in. If you like roguelikes and still haven't played this, I don't know what you're doing, but fix that. And that's it for today. Those were the top 20 action roguelike games currently out that you must play. Got a hidden gem I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video or found a new game to try, feel free to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content. Once again, if you want to grab games at a cheaper price, check the link in the description. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.